Good morning. Two more hands. Both hands. I'm in middle position and call a pre-flop raise. That's our theme for at least the next several days. So in this hand, we've got under the gun, open raises. We have only big blind posting, no small blind in this hand. So we're six-handed. Under the gun raises. Under the gun's a 25, 23 player. 74 hands. If we look at his position stats, you can see that he does get much more loose as he has favorable position. So 25, that 25% is only 2 out of 8. So I think we're going to have a somewhat tight raising range, open raising range. We're going to probably do something like this. That's at 11%. Maybe all of the suited aces. I think that's probably good. 2 out of 8. I mean, you always have the elements of chance that are going to throw that off. I think we'll be conservative. That's going to be his range. I think we are dealing with ace queen. We're kind of near the middle of his range. And our equity's at 50%. So our options now are to call or to fold. And with it being offsuit, I think calling's okay. I think if you think you're going to, if you have a bunch of loose players behind you and you want to really get a heads up against this person, you could 3-bet. This guy calls 28%, calls pre-flop bets at 28%, so he's a candidate for calling, and so is this person. But being in mid position, I think you could probably just call here and see what happens, and that's what I did. And then villain 10 calls. Villain 10 is a very loose player, 41, 17, 11. He can show some aggression. When you look at his VPIP, it doesn't really look like he's playing position. He's probably playing the same range wherever he's sitting. So if we look at his range, we're going to say pockets, broadways. We're going to add a lot of these suited hands. He just called, so I'm going to say probably all of those kings. I think maybe offsuit connectors. We do have to take out hands that he would have 3-bet. So his 3-bet's at 11%, 5 out of 45. Do we have any information on his 3-betting range? Yeah, 3-betting range. So we've seen him ace queen offsuit, and we've seen a 4-bet with eights. So if he 4-bet with eights, I'm going to assume he'll 3-bet with eights, unless that 4-bet came in someplace maybe like maybe he was in the blinds and it was a possible steal position. I'm going to leave that in because I don't think most people will 3-bet that. I think that's a pretty okay range, maybe a little tight. So maybe his 3-betting range is something closer to that. Maybe the 10. I think we'll do that, but we'll leave everything else in. So that's 35%. That's probably that's probably okay. He might have some extra hands in there that we're not accounting for, so maybe a jack, maybe some of those, maybe. Yeah, we'll leave the jack 9, maybe some of those. I think that widens it up, gets us a little bit closer to his 41%. So that's what he's calling, and against that range, we're going to be doing pretty good, 63%. he's missing all these top hands. So queen falls, ace falls. We're gonna be way ahead of him. All right, so three of us take the flop. Comes queen of spades, 10 of hearts, and 4 of clubs. I should say this is a 10 and L table. So I think a lot of times you're going to see C bets happening. Um, by these out of position players. For this player, I have 100% C betting, 100% 3 out of 3 when he's in position, and 1 out of 1 when he's out of position. This time he just chooses a check. I think when he checks, I think we can get rid of all of those solid cards. I think even the top pair, I don't think he has a top pair. Pocket pair below top pair probably checks, maybe middle pair checks, weak pair. I think we're going to do all of that. We're going to say gut shots, overcards. I think all of those check. It's to me now. Now that he checked, I think I should have bet here. I do have top pair. We're a three-way pot, so I don't really want to mess around with letting cards hit that allow one of them to uh, beat me. So Jack or a king. Yeah, if a Jack allows ace king now to pick up, 9-8 to pick up, gives people a reason to call. I've got top pair, top kicker. I think we should just bet it. If everyone folds, so be it. We realize our equity in this hand. I didn't do that. I checked, which I think is a mistake. And this loose player he bet half pot. So what is he going to bet on this board? That's kind of interesting. We're going to have to look at his aggression stats. So he has 17% pre-flop raise, 11% 3-bet. Raise first ins, 22%. I think he's somewhat of an aggressive player. We're going to look at his float stat. So that's when the aggressor checks. Do they take advantage and bet? He's got 0 right now. He'd never been in this opportunity. This is actually the first opportunity. So with this, I think he's going to have somewhat of a wider range. I think a set could probably bet half pot. The board is somewhat, not overly dynamic, but you've got high cards and you have possibility of straights. 2 pair being made depending on if a king comes, ace, king, jack, 9, or 8 could all potentially make 2 pair at that point. So the hand, whichever hand's ahead right now, could change on the turn and on the river. It could change drastically. So I'm going to say he might bet with a set, 2 pair, over pair, top pair. I think he'll probably bet with that. Pocket pair, below top pair, probably not. Middle pair is all of those 10s. I think he'll probably bet those. I mean, no one's really shown strength. I think I think he's aggressive enough. His stats aggressive enough to say he's going to take a stab with it and try to pick it up. The weak pair with the 4, probably not. I think 4 is just going to check behind, but not all of the 4s, not all of these weak pairs. So you've got 9s and 8s in there. I think some of those are going to bet because you have potential for backdoor straight draws. So what we're going to do is we're going to filter those. We're going to say, okay, I think ace 4 is going to check, king 4 is going to check. I think all of these 4s are going to check. Let's take those out. Yeah, against the right person, they may bet, but I just don't think so. I think 6s and 7s is gonna fold. I think 8s and 9s. So I think 9's gonna probably bet. 8, maybe not. So I think we'll leave 9s in there. All of those other, I think 9s is gonna probably be the only weaker pair that's gonna bet. I think everyone else is gonna check. Ace high is gonna check. No made hand's gonna check. I think open end straight draws probably gonna bet. The gut shots probably going to bet because of how aggressive he is. 2-card backdoor flush, probably not. Open-ended straight draw pair, none of that. So we're looking at 36.1% of his hands. I'm still ahead because he has these weaker cards in there. So against that, I think we can definitely call. Villain 13 calls, and the question is, we've already eliminated those hands. So what is he going to call with? Well, his pocket pair below top pair is a jack, so we're going to leave that in. I think he would check call with that. I think maybe check call with a middle pair. Maybe check call with a weaker pair. Probably not. Ace high hand, no. No made hand, no. Open-ended straight draw, he'll call. Gut shot, I think he'll call. Uh, I don't think he'll call with any of those. So I think he's calling at 41%. So 73% against that hand. So overall, I think I'm doing pretty well against this. We could have kind of defined the hand a little bit better if I bet. I think I would have bet the same amount, 5. I think both of them probably still would have called, and then we would have taken the turn of a 6 of spades. So now, in my mind, that doesn't help anybody. So I would plan to go ahead and bet again, bet for value, because I'm thinking who can call. I think a queen calls my bet, 10 calls the bet, maybe jacks calls my bet. Jack 9, so your straights, your gut shots are going to call, and now I think we're going to lose the gut shots. We'll still get called by the open-ended straight draw, and that's fine. I think it'll be a little bit easier to play against that open-ended straight draw. So we can probably get a second, we can fire a second bet on the turn and get worse to call. Definitely, I think king, queen, queen, jack would also call that bet, so we're getting value from them. Villain 13 checked. I think no big surprise. I think he's going to continue checking again, and with that 6, I don't think it really changes much. So it's with his entire range, he's just going to check. I check, and since I checked the flop, I'm okay with checking the turn, giving the free card. Yeah, I'm allowing open-ended straight draw to get there, but at the same time, if I bet and he raises, I feel at that point I can't really call. So I'm kind of controlling the pot, trying to keep it a little more on the smaller side. He bets again. So question is, what is he going to bet with? Well, I think he's going to bet with sets 2 pair over pair, probably the top pair as well. I think he's going to give up on his middle pair and his weak pair. Middle pair are the 10s, and he's not going to give up on all of those middle pairs. I think he's going to continue. Yeah, I think the middle pair is going to probably check. I'm not sure if a 10 is going to bet or not. So ace 10. I think we're going to leave the middle pairs out. I think you've got 2 people that have already called. I think he has to be concerned that maybe the queen is out there, that someone has a queen, and if we don't have a queen, then his 10 could be out-kicked. So maybe an ace 10, king 10 is a possibility. I think king 10 could be in my range, king 10 suited. I'd only play that in select situations. Flush draw, I think, would probably check at this point, but the open-ended straight draw, I think, would probably still bet. I mean, the gut shots, so that 8-9 has now picked up the 7. So I think he's still going to bet. He's going to, and he's betting half a pot. Does he bet half the pot? Maybe. We can set that at like 50% if we wanted to, but I think he might still bet, and we're still ahead. So I justify the call. Villain folds, so I think with that fold, he's just going to give up maybe his middle pair, his pocket pair, below top pair. I think all those that he had. I don't think he has a flush draw. I don't think he has open-ended straight draw. I think he was just calling to see what that turn card was. Favorable turn that kind of gave him more outs, he'd call. But that didn't happen, so we fold. So we are down to 1 player now. I think I'm okay with the call. We're kind of in a position where we're going to have to play a guessing game now, because we don't know what he might bet and what he might just check behind. So pot's now 50 big blinds. I've got 80, a little bit more. 9 of hearts comes on the turn. So now we have option of betting or checking. I think if we bet, I'm not sure if we can bet like half pot or less. I think if we bet half pot or less, we might get raised, and we might get raised by like a king queen. I think that's kind of saying, hey, we want to see the pot, and we could open ourselves up to a bluff at that point. If you're thinking about betting, maybe going a little bit smaller. I haven't messed around with it, but I think check calling is fine too. You're checking one more time and gonna let him bet because if we think about what is he gonna bet, he's gonna bet his straights and sets again. Um, he's definitely gonna bet his straight that he has. The sets probably I think he'd bet, and two pair I think probably would bet. I think top pair is gonna check behind, and weak pair is going to probably check behind. So when you look at that, it's like 40% he's ahead of our hand, 60% we're ahead of his hand. If we bet, I think he's only going to be calling two pair plus, maybe not even two pair. He might find a fold with two pair. Sets normally call. So I think if I bet, I don't think he's calling with worse. Um, So this is kind of the argument for check calling. But if we check, I think he might bet top pair. And now if he bets top pair along with those hands that beat us, we're at 38%, 38% equity. So would he do it with all his top pairs? Well, King Queen I think would bet. Queen Jack would probably bet. Um, I think King Queen definitely bets. So let's see what happens. I check. He bet 16, an incredibly small amount. Um, so he's given us, we need what? That says 20% equity to call. So we're risking 16 to win 66. So it's, 24% is what we're looking at. We have to call 16 to win 66 minus the rake or so. Would he do that with all of his range? Well, if he does it with all of his top pair and all of these hands up top, we are definitely getting the odds to draw, or the odds to call. If he is only doing it with King Queen, so none of the other ones, then we are definitely not. So the more top pair that he has in his range, the more weak pairs that he has in the range, the more we would argue for a call. Um, I think with that small bet, he wants to be called. So I think this is a situation where he was betting half pot, and then all of a sudden 16. That could argue not so much as the straight, but something maybe like a Queen 9. Uh, Queen 9 hand, maybe 10-9, where he was betting, that middle pair and hit that two pair. So I think it seems kind of weak. We seem like we're getting odds to call with top pair, top kicker, but I think when we worked out the range here, I'm not even entirely positive that he's going to bet top pair. I think top pair's got value. So, I think with how the run out goes, I think top pair just checks behind and hopes that his queen still wins. And we can check at his showdown. So 1 at showdown, 53%. He bets 2 out of 12, calls a C bet 3 out of 8, folds a C bet 5 out of 8. So, his betting and calling, let's see here. Yeah, fold or call. Then he had 12. So saw river. Yeah, I think he's betting. He probably has it. So I think we should probably just fold. Kind of seems like a weak fold, but we called 2 half pot bets and he still fires the river. So I did call. He shows Queen 10, so that is definitely in his range. We had that all the way along. It's consistent with how he was playing. He bet half pot. He bet half pot again. I think we were justified in calling flop and probably calling the turn because we think he there was a lot of cards where he picked up equity with that 6 of spades. I think there were cards where he would still bet, and then his bet on the river, 3 bets. Hey, fold, don't pay them off. So we had this hand. It's in there. We should have folded. We should have saved money. Could we have defined the hand differently if we played it differently? Maybe. So, flop comes out, if we bet the flop, yeah, queen 10's going to call. I think if queen 10 raises here, I think we call once, which would be the equivalent of, flop and turn bet. And then if we check and he bets the turn, I think we can just be done with it. And he's demonstrated that he's got a good hand. Trips 2 pair. Probably not. I mean, ace queen, maybe king queen. I don't know, why would king queen raise like that? So I think we could have played it a little bit differently, but we did have it in his range and we should have folded. All right, so that's hand number 1. Let's clear this out and look at hand number 2. Hand number 2 has pocket 10s. This is a 10 NL table, full ring. We are 9-handed. So folds 2, villain 6. This is only his 4th hand. He open raises to 3 big blinds. We don't know anything on him, so we will just kind of do a default open raising range for that position. I think that's probably about good. 8.6%. We have 10s, which does okay against the range. So it gets to us, and we have the option of calling or raising or folding. So I think folding's out of the question. We look at the players behind us for the call. It's early in the session. I don't have a huge number of hands on these players, so but none of them are really suggesting they're overly loose. So I think I can call it and take possibly see this flop heads up with him. If I had some loose players behind, I think you could argue for a 3-bet to isolate this player. But again, he's unknown. I think a default play of calling with pocket 10s and seeing what comes on the flop is sufficient, and that's what I do. I called and folds around, and all of the blinds fold. So we are heads up. So the board comes out, Jack of diamonds, 10 of hearts, 7 of diamonds, which is great. We hit our trips. Against that range, we're sitting at 82% right now, which is great. Pot is 7.5, and villain 6 bets half pot. So what is he going to bet half pot with? Well, against the unknown, he probably has a hand. This is 10 NL. Some players will bet this. Some players will check it and recognize that Jack 10 hits the calling range quite well. We're going to assume that he is going to c-bet with, and take out all these combos, straight, set, 2-pair, over pair, top pair I think we'll bet. Middle pair is the 10, 10-9. I think middle pair might bet. The weak pairs, so those under pairs, might also bet. They've got a pair is kind of what they're thinking. So we'll leave those in. Flush draws are the diamonds. I think those diamonds would bet. That king queen would probably bet as well. So we've got 67% of hands, 68% of hands where he will bet. We're still at 80%. I think the call is perfectly fine. If we raise, I think we're going to blast out a lot of hands that would probably continue betting on the turn. So I think if we raise, flush draw will probably call. Open-ended straight might call once. And these players do tend to call flush draw. They do tend to overcall with the open-ended straight draw. But I think he's going to fold the weaker pairs. I think he's going to fold the middle pair. His top pair, so the queen jack, ace jack. I think ace jack probably calls. Queen jack maybe too. So we're going to be folding out these hands. And that's like 35%. Which I think these hands have the potential of betting again depending on the next card. So I think it might be a little better just to call and then hope that he's going to continue betting again to get us our second street of value. So I called, and then 7 hits on the turn. And in my eyes, that's great. So if I'm trying to think what he might put me on. So I could be calling with the jack, I could be calling with the 10, I could be calling with the straight draw, with the diamond draw. So if he has a pair, he's thinking, hey, that hand, that 7 doesn't hit any of those draws. I'm good to bet again. Uh, but he doesn't. So he doesn't bet. Well, what is he not going to bet? I think he's gonna check quads. All right. I think he's gonna check the full house. I mean, he's hit it big. Uh, I said we were gonna bet the straight. He may have actually checked that straight on the flop. You know, if he checked the flop, he's definitely gonna bet it now because the diamond draws are out there. So even if the straight is in his range, I think he's still gonna bet it. He still wants to bet it. He doesn't want the uh, diamonds to win out. Three of a kind, the 7. So if he bet with the 7, he now hit trip 7s. I think he's gonna bet. I don't think he's gonna slow play it. Over pair, I think is probably gonna check. Uh, be a little bit scared. Well, in his mind, if I have Jack 10, he now hit 2 pairs, so I think he might check with his overpair, queens, kings, and aces. His 2 pair, though, with Jack 10 now just got counterfeited. Um, so he may check and take one off and see what happens on the river. Top pair with the Jack, I think, is still going to bet. Flush draw, I think, might check. Open end straight draw is going to check. What's our gut shot? Our gut shots are like the 8s, the 9s, 10-9. Yeah, I think gut shot's going to check. So 75% of the hands he's going to check. We're at 90%. I'm liking where we're at. Again, just the quads is about the only hand that he could beat me with, and it's like 2%. So should we better check? I checked because again, I've hit this board hard. I don't care if a diamond comes. I don't care if a straight card comes. I've got the full house. So I think checking behind it is perfectly fine. You could say we might need to build up the pot, but you gotta think, if I bet, what is he gonna call with? He's gonna call with those. He might call with the overpair, 2 pair, maybe, but I don't think he's calling with the flush draw, open end, straight draw, or gut shot anymore. So we go from 75% down to at least that, so 38. So we've got 38 divided by 75. So 50% of the time he's going to call. Maybe that was the right play to bet at that point because he's calling 50%. Of the hands that he calls, we're still at 79%. So I was kind of thinking that if one of these suits hits, if the diamond or straights hits, he's gonna pay me off more. So I checked. Might be incorrect as I work through this now. Queen of clubs hits. Right now, I don't think that's necessarily a scary card, and he bet 11 big bets. So let's go back. On the flop, he bet half pot, and I called. And now, all of a sudden, he's betting, 3/4 pot with the queen? What does he have? I don't know. I kind of think quads would have bet smaller. I'd assume that a lot of these hands would bet smaller. I mean, they could have go half pot to try to get me to call again. But we don't know anything about this player, and it's going to be player dependent. Some players are going to bet bigger to try to get people to call more. So we'll assume just with the bet he's going to be betting quads, full house, straight, 3 of a kind, over pair. Good 2 pair. His good 2 pair doesn't exist. His top pair now is ace, queen, king, queen. So any jack 10 now just got counterfeited. I don't think his bad 2 pair is going to call weak pair. So maybe he bets with all of that. I'm ahead. And I have an option of calling or raising. If I raise, what is he going to call with? I think if I raise, he calls with 3 with over pair plus. I think he's gonna be stuck. I think he'll get rid of the top. Maybe he calls with top pair. So maybe if I raise, he calls with all of that. So I'm gonna say he will. If I raise, so a lot of players just they hate folding top pair. So if I raise, he's gonna call that entire range. We're 74% equity. I'm gonna be happy with that. I did raise. He bet 11. I raised at 29. So not pot. Uh, that was maybe half pot, or 2/3 pot, 2/3 pot bet maybe, or 3/4. I raised it. It's not a full pot size bet, and he now re-raises me, and I think that narrows it down. So I don't think he's got any of these. I think when he re-raises over the top, he might have three of a kind, but I think three of a kind would just call because of ace king gets there, uh, yeah, 8-9 gets there. Ace king had to be calling with the gut shot, and I think it calling on the flop was fine, and then we checked through, so ace king is there. I think when he raises, I'm not even sure if a straight's going to call. I think too many people with the straight uh, look at it and they get spooked out and say, "Oh, you must have a full house," but I have a straight. I'm going to have to call. When he raises, I think it's full house or better, full house or quads. So out of that 17%, basically I am behind because I think he has jacks. That full house is queens full or jacks full, and the quads are 7. So at that point, you hate to see this, but I think you could justify a fold. At a higher limit, that might not be the case. At a higher limit, they could make this play, make this bet, with as a bluff, as a straight, thinking they're going to get maybe some of those full houses to fold. I don't know. It seems tight, it seems nitty, but everything's suggesting that he has a big hand here. He wants to play for stacks. Yes, I have tens full, but with how things played out, we can justify. He got, when that 7 paired up, he had queens. He's gonna play it slow. I called. Uh, Slow down. I've got a value hand. If he had jacks and hit jacks, trip jacks. Oh, he just hit a full house. Now he's hoping that I catch up. And jacks might be the most reasonable hand there. So what do? I put the rest of his money in. He only had 8 big blinds after that. He calls. No big surprise. And what did he had? He had jacks. So that was definitely in his range. And I think it made sense. He bet trip jacks. He filled up. So now he checks the turn to allow me to catch up, uh, unknowing that I already had my hand. And I checked the same thing, hoping that he was going to check up. So, I mean, we lost. We doubled him up. Could we have gotten away from it? Yeah, I think on the river. I think at that point, when we think about it, when we think through it clearly, pocket jacks is definitely there, and I think that's the most likely candidate because the queens could have easily continued to bet at the turn, and I'd actually think he I think most people would bet the queens, having queens and sevens, uh, uh, knowing that they counterfeit jack tens. So I think we could have gotten away from this hand on the river. Definitely, we raised, and then all of a sudden he comes over the top again. That's just massive strength. We're beat. We don't have the top full house. Uh, Now, if we had jacks, and he did this, he may have had pocket tens. I think we can justify calling. So uh, let's change that. Let's instead of me having tens, let's say I had jacks. Oops. Let's say I had jacks, and he's playing it the same way. Now, when you look at it, we've got 50-50 chance because he could have the tens or he could have the queens. And again, just kind of leans. He's probably more than 50% because he's more likely to probably more likely to bet the queens on the turn. So this hand worked out. Got to know when to fold them. I missed that, and it cost me, almost 100 bigs. Hope you enjoyed these two hands. Look tomorrow for a couple more.